Hi, I'm Dan, the agency man. Over the past few years, I've been fortunate enough to speak to over 3,000 agencies about how the best grow so quickly, stay relevant, and dominate their niche. And the one thing I found they all have in common is the confidence to say no. In this podcast, I'll bring you some of those conversations to inspire you to take the leap towards going niche, help you overcome any obstacles, and give you the confidence to just say no. Today I talked to Ian Finch, founder of the Liverpool-based agency Mando. He joins us to share how his specialism has helped him grow his agency to over £4 million turnover. Ian started the business with fellow band members as a means to support his effort to become the next U2. After buying one of his co-founders out for just £800, which was an incredible deal, in the first year, and turning over £150,000 after 2 years, it became clear that building his agency was a better investment than attempting to become a rock star. Mando are Microsoft technology specialists, Episerver, Sitecore, and Azure at the heart of the work, and they focus on regulating industries. They weren't always deep specialists, and it took them the last 7 years to transition. In the process, the agency lost almost £2 million turnover because they needed to get rid of the distractions. Making tough decisions to let clients and team members go were at the heart of the change. Let's find out how Ian learned to say no. Enjoy the show. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, mate.
So about a month ago, I was on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I saw a really nice post that you put out looking for, I believe it was 2 account managers, 3 .NET developers, and let me get this right, a test automation engineer,
there
which you don't have to explain to me what it is. But one of the things that you mentioned in that, which I thought was spot on to what we're doing at the moment, and that's you're continuing to further your depth of expertise delivering for utilities and financial services using Episerver, Sitecore, and Azure. Very specialized.
Indeed it is.
Love it. So first of all, did you manage to hire those people?
Got a range of interviews at the minute, actually. From that one update, I got 5 interviews. And 3 of which we're following on from. So LinkedIn works, people.
Wow, there we are.
Updating.
I was about to say, that's what it's meant to be,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the obligatory 400 emails from recruiters.
Exactly. So. Sift through those. In terms of your specialization, do you think that that's made it a lot easier for you in terms of hiring people?
It's easier and harder in different ways. So the thing about specializing is your market proposition is clearer, and that's not just with your customers, but it's also with your partners and staff as well. You know, people have, over the last couple of years, we've been really refining the message. I've gone, I love where we're going, I'm bought in, I just want it, or I've seen the future and it's not for me. And actually both are fine because you want people fully engaged in the business. And it also allows you to develop your training and induction material more easily, more standard processes, more standard intellectual property around your template and the tooling and your approach, all of which helps people get trained and develop and work in the business more easily. Flip side of that is our particular focus and market proposition is for regulated industries, as you just pointed out, primarily in utilities, power and financial services. And there's a lot going on in those industries and that world in terms of trying to do more for less. We're always targeted pretty much on the same 2 things, which is make the end customer experience better, simpler, more user-friendly, easier, more intuitive, and reduce costs to serve those customers. So typically that means our customers want to talk to their customers less and their customers be happier about it. And so very easy to define and incredibly complicated to do in practice. And so you can imagine a situation where there's a lot of pressure from watchdogs and the government for organizations trying to do more with less, an advance of technology all the time, and big budgets, 5-year plus change management programs, lots of integrated systems, and to make something really simple and user-friendly on the front end requires that data to travel around a whole range of different things, and so lots of moving parts, lots of stakeholders, and so the bit of technology involved, the politics involved, and I mean that in a broader sense, not in an accusatory way, but just kind of stakeholder management, let's call it that, better term, and the shifting sound of policy and GDPR and ISO and all this kind of stuff going on. It requires an individual who sees a delivery challenge in the whole.
Right.
It's about working. It's not just doing the project. It's the whole wider change management piece. There's contracts. I mean, one of our existing customers, we've known them now and worked with them for 12 years, and we've been through 3 cycles of retendering for work over that time, and the latest contract is 180 pages long.
Wow.
And the old one was 90. And as a non-lawyer, may I completely preface what I'm about to say, those extra 90 pages are kind of angst, worry, Brexit, what if. It is kind of, it doesn't say a whole lot. It just says what it used to say in minutiae, in far more detail. And of course, with the best one in the world, there's a sub-clause on page 147 and subsection 4.2. But it's a bit of a gotcha, and you can imagine that across the whole account of all these different areas of risk around commercial contract relationship as well as delivery. You got to have a team that are up for that.
Yeah.
And so while we can train, you can't train everyone. Sometimes you need to hire people in who are at top of their game, at top level, who can cope with that. So those roles you mentioned earlier, account directors, I always see account direction as having 4 really key pillars to that role of commercial strategy, relationship, and to a large degree delivery as well. And by the time you get someone with those kind of skills, you're in kind of unicorn territory, really. You're trying to find people with maybe 2 to 3 of those and train up the 4 for build a team that can work. And so actually your catchment area of within digital of people can come in and start delivering £500,000, £750 million programs of work plus change on top, and have the kind of customer empathy you need, and the integration knowledge and the business savvy and being able to manage stakeholders becomes quite a small catchment area. So on the one hand, easier to define, on the other hand, harder to find.
Yeah, fair enough. That makes sense, which is quite interesting. So do you see that there's sort of a cut-off point in terms of experience? Like, do you tend to hire more senior people or get in junior people? Like, how does...
So
what do you target
that
specifically?
varies generally where you are in a business at any one point in time. And so, through our history, sometimes we've had the seniors in place, and then we've got the structure and the seniority and experience to bring in people that kind of need that support. Right now, happy to say the strategy of focusing so much means we're at a point where we need a next series of big hitters in. So of those roles that I put up, let me think, there's about 5 we mentioned now in terms of developers, PMs, AMs. Yeah, there'll be 3 or 4 of them will be really senior. Like the test automation engineer, for
I was about to say that that must be someone that knows what they're doing.
So I mean, there's someone that's changed. Testers, if you go back 5 to 10 years, or if I'm not being speaking too out of turn, a lot of the big systems integrators still have very manual testing or testers and approach. Whereas a test automation engineer is kind of a developer who's got a particular bias and leaning towards quality assurance. And so they're looking at the whole QA process through the lens of what can I automate to make sure this is bulletproof.
Yeah.
So I was talking with a customer last week. There's 1,200 get and put requests when it comes to how they're interacting with the API layer for their internal systems. And I mean, we can automate that so it's done in nanoseconds, if not seconds. But to manually test that, potentially days. And then you find something halfway through and you start again.
Yeah.
So in this world of integrated systems and kind of, particularly in financial services, where you can't mess around with data, that thing needs to be bulletproof.
Makes sense.
Then that's really important that we have these high level people coming in.
Yeah, so I think that makes total sense. So what's quite interesting now is to understand a little bit more as well about your agency, because you've been going for about 20 years, right? And 22 actually, yeah. And there's been a lot of transitions in that. I'm assuming you've not always been as specialized as you are now. Where was your pivot point? Like, where was the point where you said, you know what, this is the point where we need to now start specializing?
So the short answer is literally 18 months, 2 years ago.
Okay.
The longer answer is in agency life over 22 years, it's been a few seasons. So I could pivot this question depending on how much time we've got. Shall I go for the more recent one?
I think the most recent one, because I think that's also very specific about the technology that you've been using, and obviously that partnership with Microsoft. Yeah.
So with 22 years and I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 projects under our belt across sectors, we could have chosen anything, and so it was kind of a selection criteria. What are we good at? And we are definitely better at making functional transactional sites elegant, seamless, easy. You know, we pride ourselves as people who don't use our sites much because they can get in and get out as quick as possible. We're not in the business of creating sticky content and campaigns. And so there's a certain realization of who you are. Then as your portfolio, I mean, we work with United Utilities, for example, since 2008. And so there's a real depth of experience, you know, thousands and thousands of man-days and, you know, that go into that and other clients. And then, but with your partners, you know, Sitecore, Episerver and Microsoft, and to a certain extent, they've matured as well. And in their ecosystems, we've gone from, you know, seller license, or salvia consumption, whichever era we're talking about. But then they too, in their ecosystem, want to be able to put you in the utilities box or the financial services box, and it makes it their job a lot easier in terms of managing the ecosystem. So for us, it's kind of, there's quite a number of levers that got us to this position. So where's our track record? You know, what we're good at. What we love about our particular sector as well is they're up for a longer term relationship. It's not like a wham project and get out again. And so that's easier to build depth of experience. It's kind of, you always have a big cost of sale, but that, you know, you're not constantly having that cost of sale. Yeah. But two things combined mean, right, we can probably do some serious business here. And then with experience platforms like Sitecore and Episerver, they've both got maturity models as well. So you can't do everything on day one, and nor should you, because you learn as you go along with users, obviously. And then with Microsoft, again, you know, I don't know, like 15, 16,000 partners globally, I would guess. You know, there's enough for everyone. Yeah. And so it really helps them being specialists as well. So we've ended up in a situation of, by design, but it's working beautifully, where we have a simplification message to regulated industries, primarily utilities and water, where they need to drive up customer satisfaction, reduce the cost to serve those customers. To do so requires overhauling a digital estate. The experience platform, that single view of the customer, vies with CRM as which one's first, and so we always integrate with Salesforce or Dynamics CRM at some point within the mix, or some billing platform. There's normally a partner ecosystem, and then everything's in the cloud, so Azure, and that allows us to scale based on demand. So if there's a lightning strike or an outage, or there's a reservoir or a road leak, then, you know, people are piling on the site. So Azure can scale, both platforms can scale, both platforms can track user behavior. And so really, then where something like not just Azure but cognitive services comes in, the whole chatbot, conversational user interface, or indeed, you know, the wider piece around AI, that allows us to know our customers so well over time that the holy grail for me is that we know our customers so well. We know what we need to know, when they need to know it, ahead of when they need to know it, and push an ability to say yes, no, thank you, that's great, or transact on a device at the time they're choosing and location they're choosing. And so if we can get to the point where, for the technology we've implemented across that stack, that they never then go into the website, then we've done our job, and I think that's probably 5 to 10 years away, but that's what we're working towards.
So that's quite incredible. I mean, that's like really long-term planning with this as well. So you almost have to get it right from day one as well, exactly, and making sure you're choosing the right partners as well. What was your thought process in terms of picking Microsoft? Like, when did that happen, and what was your thought process behind that?
So there's a couple of things in Microsoft particularly, one of which goes back 15, 16 years, which is just, the .NET programming language compared with, at the time, PHP or Java. Just seems to be...
And I'm not a developer, by the way. And I'm sure there's going to be a few people watching this as well.
My inner geek's coming out there. To make it was mid-noughties decision to go, this looks like we'll get the most amount of people doing something in the right way. Proper standard-based system with a good catchment area with a company that's not going anywhere. Shoot forward, 15 years, and we're at a point in time where Microsoft have caught up. So Satya has come in as CEO for a few years now, and they've overhauled the organization. They're much more solution orientated, invested massively in the cloud. The big thing for us is that, and I'm going to paint a very personal, arguably subjective for any Amazon employees that might be coming here, but Amazon is about large scale storage and compete on a kind of volume play, and we've got clients on Amazon. That's fine. But we felt that with Microsoft, you've got a suite of tools that they've developed over a period of time, like Dynamics, like Office 365, like all the development stack that our guys use. We just think things in around. And Microsoft's always been, in my opinion, again subjectively, is a company that does everything quite well and not one particular thing brilliantly. We're never best in class at any one thing, but the spread gives us lots of options as developers. And so with Azure, the fact we've got Azure Cognitive Services, and that has 400 updates a year, but they're really committing. So we think on an infrastructure level, you've got something that scales at an enterprise level. We then got, Sitecore and Microsoft have always been very close, Episerver, Microsoft, and we know the account manager for both, and we have meetings together and when we put on events as partners. And then the way the AI piece can integrate, so just bring in intelligent search. So instead of all the heavy lifting being done by us to implement search, we got the AI piece and just self-learn. 300 different natural language versions of whatever someone might type in, just done instantly, and then self-learning thereafter. I mean, that would have taken hundreds of £1,000s worth of development 10, 15 years ago, and now it's a service we turn on. So,
like, I can turn it on.
And so we got partners that work really well together, all looking at the world in the same way, including ourselves now, looking at what that more utility monthly model looks like. You're only as good as your last month's worth of service. And so we've all got skin in the game to make sure this works. And we've all got skin in the game to make sure everything plays nicely with everything else, and so the partner system works really well. But sometimes there isn't a need for an enterprise CMS, for example, or not CMS, but an experience platform where you do just need content management for a bit. So when we're doing line of business apps, for example, that don't have any kind of content and commerce element, for example, then we still use Umbrico as an open source content management system,
which is still .NET based.
Still .NET. So
you're not weaving away, or you're not going into a complete different
no, we had those kind of
just
conversations. I remember getting an opportunity with Adobe Cloud, and I was like, it's a good opportunity. So the whole ops and dev team were like, never
we're
gonna have
specialists.
And because you got a team of 20 guys there, and they're all committed to this stack, and they're really good, and they know it inside out, the semantics, the roadmap, and everything else, and you entirely new stack. You flirt with those kind of things over the years, and it doesn't tend to go well. I mean, a lot of agencies at massive scale will do it, but for us, that partner choice works for our sectors that works for the scope in which we operate in it. You know, so it's all been thought through.
It makes sense. And I guess one of the things that I'm quite interested in to understand is, did you come up any particular problems that then made you think, okay, this is actually, we need to be more specializing in a particular industry or in a particular technology? Were there any obvious things that came up?
Yeah, I think hand on heart, you know what you're good at and where you're struggling, and I think where we're very much in kind of heavy kind of commerce, consumer land, social conversion rate optimization, commerce kind of campaigns, brand, that kind of thing. It's all part of the toolkit and always will be, but you know where you're biased, where you're not, and so, you know, our creative challenge and the enjoyment comes from geekily or otherwise reducing the number of clicks it takes somebody to achieve something.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the beauty or the brand essence or you know, the kerning of a font.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, all that is part of the toolkit, like I say, and we you know, we've won branding jobs and won awards for that over the years. But moving forward, you go, that's not going to be core what we do. And actually, part of being a specialist is knowing, like kind of a Venn diagram. Here's the core of what we do, and you know, and here's this bit about SEO, and there's an overlap.
Yeah.
So we'll do the health check stuff. It's accessible. It ranks in Google. But, you know, the kind of keyword analysis and is someone else, and then maybe pay-per-click would be a circle that would sit outside ours, and that's a definite throw overhead subcontract scenario. Yeah. And likewise, for every now and again, where it's a really high-end kind of brand project, we'll subcontract that and that someone a real specialist as part of our team.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I always say to guys, look, we've got to be T-shaped. You know, we can't just be so blinkered. Quite often, if you go really, really deep, you end up self-defeating your own proposition because you need peripheral vision to know how your deep specialism works in the rest of the world as well. So there's this term that's come up in development I just use generally about T-shaped developers. So I've got this bit, but I've got a broader sense as well. Yeah. And so it is with a company. You know, we know we're working for a customer at the minute who happens to have a tech stack that we don't do ourselves, but the rest of the account is absolutely our sweet spot. So in that particular scenario, we know enough to make it safe, performant, robust, but we've brought in a subcontractor to develop just that bit for the next year until it's part of the roadmap to overhaul it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Was there any like barriers of transitioning at the beginning? You know, like sometimes, especially like you might have clients that don't fit into that model anymore. And how do you...
I can see where this question's going. Yeah, so...
How do you get rid of them, basically?
How do you get rid of them? Yeah, nicely, leave well, yeah. I think is always a mantra. You leave with plenty of notice and respectfully, having tried to make it work and outlining where you're going and doing it in a controlled and orderly way. But do it, I think. And one of the hardest things in the last 18 months was actually go back 18 months, 2 years earlier, and following the buyout I'd done at Mando, I had some itches that needed scratching, one of which was a theory about opening a London office, for example. And so many agencies I'd known that hadn't broken 5 million, and ones that had a London office to do it. And I thought, I'm gonna have to. I just need to know. I need to know. Does it make a difference if you're winning a £250,000 Sitecore project if you're based in Fitzrovia and they're in, you know, Soho versus Liverpool and they're in Soho? And of course, there's a little bit of this, but yes, it helps when you're more local. But while we were doing London, and it was growing to a degree, we were looking at our verticals and so on, but particularly looking at the issue around profitability and longer term accounts, and actually all the money sat with customers that had a change journey to go on, and not a project, and other ones that had a change to go on. Sure enough, they were for us in utilities, in power, water and power, and financial services, amongst others. We've got some charity customers and education and so on. But it's change programs. What that then meant was, take water for example. Once you're working with Wessex Water and SES and Surrey and Northumbrian Water and UU, which is essentially Northwest We've done some consultancy for Anglia and some consultancy for Thames and went to Welsh, and then you're like,
sounds like a game of Monopoly.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, we did actually do Mando Monopoly. Well, all our clients were once. It was good fun. But at that point, a London office means nothing, because you're so well known in the sector that people are willing for you to travel a bit further, or them to travel to see you because of the extra expertise you offer. And so the hardest thing was there's three things that were really difficult. One was when this London office is pretty expensive, actually. It's pretty expensive, costs as much as our office. It's 10 times the size in Liverpool. Yeah. With London wages and transients, it goes without, compared with the provinces, the Shire folk, as we call ourselves. Then there's the fact that actually we're going to commit to this, and it's not just a sector, but it's a longer term projects that we really want to focus the time and energy in. So you're talking to customers that have been with you a while, going, unless we build a roadmap and we fund it and you actually want to do something, it's just, we wouldn't have integrity if we didn't tell you that ad hoc requests every now and again just are not going to get the time and attention that these other ones are going to get. Likewise, we can offer discounts against commitment, but our rates need to be our rates. When Sitecore developers aren't cheap, Azure architects are not cheap, Episerver architects are not cheap. People that can cope with the kind of experience design that's required to deliver these programs of work, or the project management, the account direction, they're not cheap. So our whole game's been upped and our costs have gone up accordingly. And of course, whenever you grow as an agency, you have that watershed moment that, the customers you work with then aren't maybe what you know, and that's hard. But the biggest thing I think out of three was that kind of temptation to go, but it's a project. It'll pay the bills the next few months. And it's a good project. We've got some IP from it. Will it be fun? We'll learn it. But it's not going to bring long-term revenue. It's not going to drive our repeatable income up. It's not going to be forecastable. It's not for a client in this sector. And as a result, we ended up having to downsize the business, because the other fourth component was in order to focus, we turned off some of the marketing to the kind of a wider, and we had 6 months we just hammered utilities.
Yeah.
And of course it works, but then they're big projects, so the gestation period is like 6 months. Yeah. So there's almost like a whole year's worth of marketing and sales conversion, whereas just a gap. And the only way we felt we could turn the business around with the kind of habits we had and the setup we had to get focus is we had to get leaner, really lean for a period of time to see that happen, keep the costs low, and then start growing again. And so now we've got past that period, and now we're growing at pace. The curves like that.
So that's quite interesting, and I'd like to just dig a little bit deeper into that. What was the thought process in terms of the types of people you would let go eventually out of the company? What was sort of the thinking process behind that in terms of if you look at it from a perspective of your specialism?
From a perspective of the specialism, that didn't have too much bearing on the process at a person level. Certainly had a big bearing on the London office and its need. We always felt that it would be economically viable at about 20, and we were bobbing between 4 and 7 for a fair old while, actually, and for at this point in time, we're not going to triple in size to get up to 20 anytime soon when we're changing our marketing. And so that really that was the reason for London. But when downsizing in Liverpool, it really came down to the painfully, it's going to be 6 months minimal.
Yeah.
And we can't sustain this. And so there's a couple of teams that just needed to be slimmer.
Yeah.
And no, that's tough. It was no one's fault.
Yeah.
It was just the usual kind of selection process that you go through. Now I think where it really kicks in terms of specialism is now we're leaner. Of course, people that had experience in utilities and programs of work had a higher selection criteria rating. It goes without saying, but in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not something to dwell on. But as we're growing again, it's everything. It's like everything. Have you got developers that have a little bit of a hacky nature to them, or have you got developers that are just paranoid from the ground up, in which case brilliant, they're thinking through every which way imaginable their work's going to go wrong. Test automation engineers, not testers. Account managers are, with great respect, well beyond relationship managers, well beyond farmers and would-be consultants, business strategists, really commercial people. And so that's part of your thinking in terms of how the team blend is going to work. But then I'd rather focus on how we're growing again.
Absolutely. And this is the process you have to go through sometimes, right? Like to make a change. It's not, and I think this is a really key message that you're delivering here, which is making a significant change to your agency, especially if you aren't a specialist at this point. To becoming a specialist can be hard.
It is,
and you've got to be disciplined about it as well. And obviously, there's probably always that little bit of doubt in the back of your mind when you go through that process. Have you made the right decision? And you kind of, but you've made the decision, so you've got to stick with it. And at what point did you see, I guess, the first sort of signs of success of you, where you've started to transition more and more towards a specialism? Like what were the signs of that?
So from a market position perspective, we did a load of work around thought leadership white papers for utilities, went to Utilities Week Live, did a round table, did some speaking. And then from an existing customer, also 2 new customers, we got some RFPs through. And then in that summer, so not one just gone, so 2018, when these are going to be the new standard of RFP response that we've ever done. This is going to be top of the tree. And in a quarter's time, whether you win or lose, we're going to look back and go, that was a step change for us. And great news is, of the 2 we ended up going for, we won, and both clients said it was the best RFP they got out of a lot. And we're like, validation, high five moments. and that's just not a moment in time. That was going, well, in this new world of ISO accreditation and risk aversion and program, we're going to have to learn from something we did a couple of years ago where we got our asses kicked on one bit around a managed service offering. We learned from that, and we got to make this a bit more bulletproof. And so that and a few other examples, we're like, on every single area we're going to have a step change and balance describing accurately what you do and describing accurately what you plan to be doing, and what, hand on heart, you'll be doing in 6 months' time when this kicks in, but set yourself a standard to live up to, as well as be honest, because at any point in time, when a gestation period for a deal could be 6 to 12 months. You'd be crazy to say the way things were. By the time, a year ago, by the time you start, you've always got to be thinking ahead, but at the same time, you don't want to overreach, because that's not going to get a relationship off to a good start even. So I think we got that balance perfectly, actually. I think we did a really good job on that. So that's one. I think another one was actually just recently where we're negotiating, we're not negotiating, but discussing, there you go, some design and execution with a customer who I think they were a little underwhelmed, to be honest with you. And be like, well, just explain underwhelmed. And there's some legitimate stuff we're like, yeah, fair enough. Do you know what? We could work that a bit harder. And there's other stuff going, that's not your audience. And we know it's not your audience because we did this 6 years ago and this happened, and we've got 3 other customers all going through this now, and actually people don't want that kind of design, and particularly in utilities, you think there's a pretty much a catchment area that is everyone. You know, an 18-year-old gamehead that's never off a computer, and a 90-year-old person with Alzheimer's who can't see very well, who's reliant on a family member to do it. We're catering for both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not going to be a fortnight wraparound, you know, the design and that, because that breadth of demographic, you know, it's more akin to Google or gov.uk, which, you know, are not going to win beauty awards, but they work like
utility
a treat. You know, what we're trying to do we want to be effective or beautiful? And the answer is both, of course. And sometimes there's a conversation around a timeline. Sometimes a brand launch is so critical. You do want to take over the homepage and make a big deal of it. But then, you know, and that's where the roadmap comes in place, what we're trying to achieve at what we're learning from the previous month. And so creating a design system that works and can scale and can adapt and be tweaked and evolve over time is far more important than nailing an award-winning poster on day one. Does that make sense?
In this particular context, 100%. So that was good validation, because it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you kind of look at how do you measure expertise? How do you how what makes you a better agency in the utility space than another agency who also uses Microsoft? You know, that's
right.
That's quite an interesting one in terms of how you like validate that, right?
Yeah, the ROI is absolutely critical, and the audit trail of decision making as well. So one of my favourite examples was with a telecom company where we developed the My Account portal, and this is a company gone for a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and there's like 14 different portals that their staff and their customers had to work through to get provisioning of whatever it was, bandwidth, handsets. Yeah. And so we did a Lord of Rings project, as I call it, where we went one portal to rule them all, and, you know, consolidated it all, work with different stakeholders, and that was a brilliant project. And it's kind of, that approach is probably philosophically the starting point of our entire proposition since that was about 6-7 years ago. So we did that really well, and then we took on the ongoing management of it, managed services, and then we got introduced to another part of the business that were doing a portal for their customers, and it was fine, it was okay, it was like hitting the spec from a kind of data perspective, but not from a kind of experience. And so they asked us in, and that project we took. So you imagine a situation: one of our customers is an intermediary and selling product to their customers. So for customer, and that person is on minimum wage and they're on commission. How many times they can go through this process a day to maximise their commission and get product shipped to their customers as quick as possible? You couldn't get through that system in less than 20 minutes. By the time we'd worked with them and on the experience design and what we could do to bypass that and create this, we took it down to 5 minutes.
Wow.
And, you know, at that point, you're just like, I'm going to get out of bed for that because the value we're creating through good design. Yeah. You know, the telecom customers shipping more product. Their intermediaries are shipping more product. The end customers getting their product earlier, and the people at the coalface doing the do are getting 4 times the commission minimally that they were before. So everybody is winning through great experience design.
Based on what you've designed there and the incredible ROI you've generated for this particular client, how has your expertise influenced the decisions that you made in that design process for that particular client?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different areas of expertise that go into that. It's an obsession around reducing clicks and what you can do in page rather than waiting for next page so there's a whole flow diagram and sequencing that's important. It's aspects of personalization, because some of that bits, if you know the customer, you don't have to ask the question, or a combination of the two. Do we need to know it now? Or can can we know later on? Can we just get on with it? There's, to achieve that, you need to know what data you can access where and how quickly for different systems that get you there. So there's an integration piece. And then more latterly, in recent years, it's like, well, what can we predict through AI? Because this process has been done many times before, and here's the most likely answers. And actually, how much can you pre-populate, for example? And then, of course, device strategy, and someone on mobile and a desktop and so on. So what we do by way of specialism is we ensure internally we have sectorial knowledge base, standard routes through a payment process for a vulnerable customer, for example. Now there isn't a standard payment process for a vulnerable customer, but what we learned on a few different projects, and here's some real nice to haves, and clearly stuff around accessibility, positive, negative space, color contrast, and so on. I had a customer ask me, can you just design our site for people with Alzheimer's? Because I'm pretty sure if you make it work for them, you can make it work for anyone. And I was like, I should have been saying that to you. That's genius. Yes, we're going to do that. And Brilliant. So loads of stuff internally about, how can we keep the language really simple? How can we keep declutter the screen, make the calls to actions really simple? Are we overcomplicating because we've got a bit excited with JavaScript? There's a transition here and a doobie-doo there, and then actually, look, simple.
Yeah.
If what we're doing makes it simpler and easier, then it's in. Yeah. If it doesn't, then it's out. Yeah, and it makes it easier to art direct.
Of course.
Easier to experience direct, easier to measure. Is this faster than it was or slower than it was?
Yeah.
What are our drop-offs? What's our call center volume in relation to this, and tracking both? And sometimes that's the hardest bit, because you're waiting on customer data that's not always accessible. But that which we can control and get access to, we always align.
Yeah, and it seems like in the regulated space, that seems like quite obviously not an easy task, but a lot simpler if you're focused in that area, because then it's not about creating some crazy animation of a Nike shoe or something like that then needs to look in a certain way and whatever. It's like, well, that's not relevant. What's relevant is this particular customer that can't see properly, or needs to still be able to get that water to their house, basically, pay the bill, whatever it is, right? So that, again, your specialism allows you to work within really clear parameters. And,
or at least be clear about where it's vague, if that makes
exactly.
sense. So this is an unknown. This is a hypothesis, and there is no direct means of measurement, but the indirect means of measurements are this. So, when we're measuring that, let's have some conversations around how's this influenced that decision. But it's definitely easy when you've built up in this scenario we measured it this way. You start building that knowledge base, and then you've got more gravitas when you're having some challenging conversations with a customer, or I don't mean challenging as in argumentative, I just mean challenging as in they think one thing, experience as another, and then we're just kind of trying to meet in the middle, because you always want to make sure every context is unique, and you want to be listening as well. But you also have to accept people have employed us for our expertise, and they want to be led. And so if you're going, maybe, and we'll see, or I suppose, that's not good language. So you kind of
I think.
Oh man, I know. I'm going back a long time ago now, but one of the most seminal moments in our history was actually about 9 years ago, and I had a customer who became a friend. Actually, just went, I hate it when you say I think. I hate it when you look like I just want you to know. And I was like, that's unreasonable, don't you? But that's like you de facto. He goes, I accept it's unreasonable about everything. Yeah. But on matters of anything that can be processed and can cause risk, I want you to know. And I was like, that's a good challenge.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. I'll do that.
Brilliant. So one final question really is, what top tips would you give generalist agencies, I would say, agencies that are doing various services for various industries, and want to become specialists? What's your, let's say, top three?
Wow, okay.
Let's do your top three.
Okay.
And if it's just one, it's just
If
one.
it
It's
might
fine
be
as well.
6, okay, well, I'll keep talking. You can either edit me out or you can keep asking me questions. So I think, see, I did it there, didn't I? I don't think. This is my advice. I do think, but this is my advice. The sooner you do it, the better.
Yeah.
And you will have to grieve some stuff too, particularly if you're the CEO. So, if I go back early enough in Mando's history, we did loads of creative work in media and entertainment. We actually got our first ever award as an interactive BAFTA nomination for really highly visual stuff for Mersey Tea.
What a difference, right?
I know, yeah. And so there is a definite kind of creative, aesthetic, visual part of me that hankers a little bit. And I think I probably delayed things a little bit by being a bit weirded out that we couldn't do everything. Because but I'm the only one that's lived the last 22 years and 5,000 projects, so of course I've got this breadth. But it's very hard to recruit around that and train it and really outline around a position. So I think you've got to find a way to divorce what's best for the business perhaps from what's necessarily best for you, and loads of CEOs won't have a problem, but I had that problem. And there's the Good to Great book. Jim Collins talks about the hedgehog concept, where you have that which you can be best in the world at, that drives your economic engine, and you can follow your passion. Where that intersects, that's where your sweet spot is. Now, we had that principle best part of 7 years ago, but if I could live last 7 years ago, I'd speed up the process of doing that. But sometimes it's a trial and error thing. But if you look where we're at now, passionate about accessible, quick, easy to use, utilitarian but elegant experiences, and making the web accessible for that 18-year-old gamer and 90-year-old Alzheimer's sufferer. And passionate about experience platforms that give you that single view of the customer and allow you to continually evolve. Our economic engine comes from repeat business and account customers, and that's so much easier in the sector. And I truly believe we can be the Western world at it. I think we've got 30% market penetration at the minute just in water. So those kind of principles are good. We could have done it quicker. And so I think, number one, do it quicker and don't get in the way of your own business. I think number two would be your client base needs to become more focused, but your staff need to go on that journey as well, and commit that every time there's lessons learned or a retrospective, whatever you want to call it, but go, this bit's reusable intellectual property, this bit's reusable components will achieve this, and get really good around your own IP management and configuration management and internal portfolio references to make sure that the whole team is upping their game and cross-referencing. And so you hear so many stories with particularly customers that have perhaps worked with a massive consultancy, 250,000 staff, and they've been seduced by the low day rate in the offshore, and there's 400 people on site, and those 400 people never met each other, have no idea about the sector. They've just once done something in Sitecore ages ago. One of them has out of 400. And whereas, when we're the minnow, against the whale, kind of in terms of scale and size, but we're agile and we know what we're talking about to a man, to a woman, to a person. Everyone in the company is around this purpose of simplicity in this sector to deliver as much value as possible, and we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, or we've got standard project management sheets, standard tooling, standard risk sheets we can go in with, and you're just hitting the ground running straight away. So the choose early, don't hold back on the IP, make sure you're thinking of this from every single angle of what's repurposable in your business. And the bit that we're, I think, a bit shy on, that I'm preaching to myself here, is don't stop training people. So I've been watching a lot of Football Manager interviews, and you listen to Klopp and Pep and so on, compared with a lot of the other managers. And their philosophy shines through, and know exactly what they're doing, and they all stop at nothing to make sure all their team players are on it as well. And these players, £300,000 a week. And, you know, I saw one where Sterling's been interviewed. He goes, well, yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing. So, oh, yeah, well, I was turning left and he told me to turn right. You know, it's like, he's like the Zoolander of a football that's just spun around to go a certain way. You know, and I think Lampard was commenting, he goes, we learn that when you're 7. Drop the shoulder and shoot. And I think, for me, what I took away from that is Lampard's missed the point, is that, yeah, you learned it at 7, but get the basics right, everything else will follow. And by going left, not right, whatever I said, you know, he's got an extra half second in front of goal to compose himself and shoot. And I translate that to Mando, and I've got these football managers are working with people on £300,000 a week who have done this since for the last 15 years, since they could walk. Just doing shot runs, just doing basics, just turn left, don't turn right. And then I have, you know, bless them, a junior member of staff that's been with us a few months. I've told them twice. They've made the same mistake twice. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, and, but they're not on £300,000 a week. You know, so if it's completely normal, acceptable for a football manager to continue train and invest in the team and believe in them, but go for the drills, go for the basics all the time, how much more important should it be in my context? And so that's a massive area of focus for us right now. So I think, the top 3 are do it and do it quickly. And if you fail, iterate quickly, but don't get involved too emotionally yourself. Just choose what's right for the business. But obviously, if you can't be passionate about it, that's pointless as well. But in terms of like tweaking the edges, really invest in the IP and the learning so everyone can be a consultant. And then ensure that by really working on the training to make sure everyone's up to the same speed.
And that's brilliant, by the way. Thank you very much. I think that's absolutely spot on in terms of tips. Really, really useful. And it's interesting on the third one that you mentioned. There's, I think, in Alex Ferguson's autobiography, he talks about Ronaldo and how he's sort of told him that if he just lengthened his stride a little bit, or I think it was one or the other. It was either lengthening stride or shortening, one of the two. That allowed him to just basically be so much quicker by a fraction of a second. But that little change, and then him practicing it over. And Ronaldo notoriously is someone who just trains over and over and over
first
and
on
over again.
First on a training pitch, last off, wasn't he?
Exactly.
And always thinking.
Exactly. And it reminds me of a book I recently read, which is a great one. Actually, I highly recommend that to you and anyone else that's listening, called Peak, by a guy who works for the University of Florida called Anders Ericsson. And what he did.
I've heard of this, haven't we?
Yeah. So I think probably listen to first half of the book and then you got the whole book pretty much. Right. It's one of those type of things, like he sort of starts repeating himself. But what's really great about it is he talks about this thing called purposeful practice. And what they analyze is experts in various areas like pianists, ballerinas, marathon runners, and so on, right? And what makes them become an expert. And it's purposeful practice. So something very specific they will do over and over again, like play a specific part of a tune. A pianist might do that, and in a certain way. And then they'll get feedback straight away from the teacher, and then they'll go and they'll train that again over and over and again.
Right, okay.
And it's just like little tweaks over and over again, but then it's the amount of practice that then makes them pretty much a master at what they are. Yeah. And it's quite interesting because we do get into these habits, right? Like sometimes in our jobs where we're doing the same thing over and over again, there's no feedback from anyone. Yeah. So you're actually not getting better. You might even be getting worse at your job potentially. Yeah. So regardless of how smart you are, of how long you've been doing the job, you can always take it to that next level.
Definitely. Yeah. And so, well, I've done some sales training. In fact, I kind of do sales training each year, and it doesn't change a whole lot. It's exception handling, the buyer seller dance. It's all that Sanderson book. But every time I do it, there's something that I know I've just become a little bit sloppy. Yeah. And I do that for myself, so why wouldn't I just lead the way and enforce the people? I haven't had 22 years and 5,000 projects to do as well. It's insane, I think, actually, how little we invest in training. I mean, we've talked about it as well as a leadership team, but, and we've all got, well past the point when you look at the management accounts at the end of the year and go, oh, we saved on training. No, we didn't. We missed an opportunity to invest. So we're there, which is great. And but I think really driving it and making it non-negotiable, I think is something we can improve on. But two, I was saying to the guys, I think we underestimate our own ability. Actually, 10 minutes with me around exception handling or quickly building rapport, or little techniques, and not be a bit overwhelmed when left field things happen. You know, that's probably all someone needs. But then if they get some stuff around about focus and mark next day or consulting from John, and if we should probably do a lot more just little chunks of training internally as well, because remember that diagram, we go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence, then you go back to unconscious competence, and at that point you're like, you're top of your game, you're like, I don't know why I am. I've forgotten. I've only ever met one guy ever who knew exactly how to go back round the loop again and could almost empathically feel every level, and therefore knew how to train people. I've met a lot of people. I've met one who was good at that, But if you can force yourself to go, what is my decision-making criteria here? Your point about the book earlier, if you read Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, where it talks about
similar.
How does an art specialist know what's a fake and what's not? It just looks magic, But there was one about a divorce lawyer who, divorce counsellor, I think it was, or couples counsellor, and he knew 100% of the time which couples would make it through counselling, which ones wouldn't. And they were like, that's amazing. And it came down to one thing. Contempt or respect, whichever way you look at it. And the couples that were at each other's throat, almost violent, but had a basic respect, were going to be okay. The guys that had switched off and were hurt but had respect were okay. The people that just were full of contempt and just like, they weren't going to make it. And it came down to one single thing. And that's the area when you're in that unconscious competence space where you're just picking up all the time, and you can be so weirded out when someone else doesn't spot it, but you're just like, they haven't lived it, they haven't done the 10,000 hours of practice.
Exactly.
But it can be spotted, and if you could just jot it down, you can turn to training and help people fast track.
And exactly like I said, I think the amazing part with that is when you can write that down, as you said, document processes, document these things, and if you can do that in a, I always said this, it's if you start off your agency doing design, development, marketing, and everything, basically video, it's going to be quite hard to document those processes. Well, basically, you have to do it 4 times, right?
And you hire some good people and you leave it with them. And then when they go, you suddenly realise you've got no process. You had a really good guy.
Exactly, exactly. And doing that 4 times is a lot of time, right? Like, whereas if you do it once and keep refining that better and better, then that's so much more efficient to do it that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd constantly try and get people into a kind of iterative mindset and go, just get a version 1. Get a version 1. I'll do 1.1 next week. And I said, but just get it out and then start refining against it. And don't lose sight that it is going to not be perfect and it will need to improve, but let's at least version it for now. And it's only in the age of Agile, it's so hard still to build that habit. People are just waiting. No, get it out. Let's train against that, and then we'll constantly refine.
Makes sense. Absolutely brilliant. Look, I wish you all the best with Mando over the next couple of years. I don't know what your long-term plans are, but obviously it looks like your specialism is going to make a massive difference for you.
Stay. We're all the first fruits are there.
And obviously some of those transformational projects that you mentioned are going to be taking years and years to materialize. So you'll definitely be around for another few.
I'll come back in a couple of years.
I was about to say, I would love to hear what's happened in the meantime. But for now, thank you so much for your time and all the feedback that you've given, all the tips that you've given to the listeners. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, thanks for having me. And if anyone wants to get in touch direct, by all means, just share my deeds.
Thank you for listening. Now I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like me to interview a particular specialist agency, send them my way. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Dan the Agency Man, or send me an email to daniel@theagencycollective.co.uk. Also, please subscribe to the podcast to get notified when we release a new episode. I'm Dan the Agency Man, and you've been listening to Say No.